Hello, everybody. This lecture is going to be on the dust and gas within the Milky Way, plus how the Milky Way formed and sort of the future of the Milky Way. The space in between stars contains gas and dust particles. This is called the interstellar matter. Inter is a root word meaning in between. Stel is a root word meaning star. So in between the stars, we have matter. It has a very low density, only a few atoms per cubic centimeter, so it's almost a perfect vacuum. Gravity has pulled most of this matter into a thin layer in the disk. This can be seen in the Sombrero Galaxy, which I'll show you on the next slide. With this layer, the gravity and gas pressure have clumped the gas and dust into roughly spherical clouds a few light years to a few hundred light years across or in diameter. So you can see, this is the Sombrero Galaxy, but you can see the cloud here. As interstellar light passes through the interstellar cloud, absorption by the gas and dust imprint a narrow dark lines in the star's spectrum. So we looked at these absorption lines when we looked at star composition. So we can do the same thing for our interstellar clouds. These lines enable astronomers to determine the cloud's composition, its temperature, density, and speed, very similar to what we can do when we look at these spectral lines when we look at stars. The gas is about 71% hydrogen and 27% helium, and 2 to 3% of heavier elements. Solid dust particles in the cloud are very thin and are composed of silicate and carbon atom compounds. The dust particles are probably coated with a thin layer of ices, typically water or carbon monoxide or methyl alcohol. Dust in space dims the brightness and alters the color of stars we see because the light's passing through this interstellar dust cloud. We'll typically get a dim and redder look because the light, as it passes through the cloud, some of it will be bounced away from our vision, so that causes the dimming. And the light that's being bounced away typically is the shorter wavelength, like the blues and the purples. So we tend to see more redder colors. The light is reflected in different directions. There's a process called scattering. Same thing happens in our atmosphere. We have light scattering, and that's why our sky is blue. We have different colors typically scatter different wavelengths. So light is scattered strongly if its wavelength is smaller than the particles. So if you remember the Roy G. Biv, red has a long wavelength and blue and violet have shorter wavelengths. So in this image here, we have our blue light tends to get scattered, so it never reaches our eye. So the red light is what typically reaches our eye. Now, some red light can scatter, but more red lights will reach the earth than the blue light. So when we look at these gas clouds, we'll see more reddish colors. And the same thing happens with our blue sky. Except when we look up at the blue sky, we see a lot of this blue light is scattering and it doesn't quite reach the ground. So we look up and we sort of see this blanket of blue light. Scattering of starlight dims the star's light because much of it is scattered in other directions. So we have less photons reaching Earth. Red light scatters less than blue light. So the light that we can see typically looks redder because the red light is what's reaching our eyes, and that's called reddening. If a dust cloud is extremely thick, it may hide the light of the background stars to the point that we cannot see them with the naked eye anymore. This creates a dark region, which astronomers call a dark nebula. Dust can also be obscure in any galaxies behind it, but these galaxies can be detected with radio and infrared telescopes. So the image below shows a dark nebula in the right-hand side of the picture. The dark nebula lies to the right of this cluster. Remember our term star cluster. So here we have a star cluster to the left, and here's our dark nebula to the right. So in this example, the sun is here, so we are going to be orbiting the sun. If we look in this direction, we have a huge dark cloud. So we really can't see much of this stuff. So this is all hidden from our view. So with various satellites, we can take infrared photos, and we can look at X-rays, gamma rays. We can look at a lot of other ways to view a galaxy. So the image below shows a composition made of many infrared photographs. Interstellar gas is the material from which stars form from. Dust blocks our view of large parts of the galaxy. Interstellar gas emits radiation that penetrates the dust and allows us to, quote unquote, see such regions of the galaxy at infrared and radio wavelengths. So again, we can't actually see it with our naked eye, but we can use radio waves and infrared telescopes to be able to detect those wavelengths. Interstellar gas also creates huge glowing clouds called emission nebulas that are heated by stars embedded within them. Hot blue stars in such clouds are good at heating gases around it to a high enough temperature for the gases to emit visible radiation. So this picture is an example of an emission nebula. Here's another emission nebula. Note how they tend to be on the redder color scale. Ultraviolet radiation from hot blue stars can ionize hydrogen atoms in the cloud. In the ionized gas, free electrons collide with atoms of other elements, specifically typically nitrogen and oxygen, and excite them, making them emit light like of their own. This is exactly like the northern lights. When electrons and solar wind come from the sun, it excites the nitrogen oxygen atoms in our atmosphere. It excites them, and that's how we get our northern lights. Eventually, the electrons recombine with hydrogen ions and emit more radiation. Much of this radiation is red light of the alpha line and in the hydrogen spectrum. Because hydrogen in these hot clouds is ionized, they are sometimes called H2 regions, hydrogen 2 regions. The hydrogen 2 regions generally appear in the spiral arms of the galaxy. They have a temperature of about 10,000 degrees Kelvin and are heated by the electrons freed by ionizing ultraviolet radiation. And now we're going to move on to the formation and the future of our Milky Way. A major unsolved problem in astronomy is how galaxies form. Astronomers believe that galaxies formation is a large-scale version of a star formation. So we have a big gas cloud, it collapses due to gravity, and it breaks up into stars. Remember, that's very similar to how stars form, where we have a nebula, which is a gas cloud, and that collapses due to gravity, and that forms a star, a couple of stars, and the planets. To form a galaxy, the cloud would have to be huge, though, typically about 1 million light years across and contain about 100 billion solar masses of gas. The most important evidence to support this idea comes from the differing properties of the two stellar populations. Remember population 1 and population 2 stars that we talked about? Recap, population 1 stars, these are typically young, rich in heavy elements and found in the disk of the galaxy, whereas population 2 stars are older, they're poor in heavy elements, they orbit at highly elliptical paths that are steeply inclined at the disk. So this is just, you've seen this picture before, this is just jogging your memory. So this would be population 1 stars, these dotted arrows over here would be the population 2 stars. In 1961, some astronomers proposed that population 2 stars, being older, formed in the first stages of the gigantic gas cloud. The cloud had a mass of about 10 to 11th solar masses and was composed of almost pure hydrogen and helium. The earlier collapse was very slow, lasting as much as a few 100 million years old. Massive stars that formed in the early stages of collapse consumed all of their fuel and exploded as supernovas before they reached the center of the galaxy. The gas they ejected was rich in heavy elements and mixed with the gas of the cloud. These massive stars made up the first population of stars, but are not population 2 stars. Stars continue to form, but now they contained traces of heavy elements. These are the population 2 stars. After this first phase, enough gas was left over to form a rotating disk. The disk gas was rich in heavy elements from the deaths of population 2 stars. Remember, as stars age, they will burn or fuse heavier and heavier elements, meaning first it's hydrogen with 1 proton, then it's helium with 2 protons, and they kind of go down the periodic table. The gases fragmented and formed the first population 1 stars. These stars followed the path of the rotating gas. This accounts for population 1 stars lying in the disk of the galaxy. According to this model, all population 2 stars should have about the same age, but they don't. Observations showed that population 2 stars formed over a much longer time span than the model predicts. The model also predicts that there should be some stars that have virtually no heavy elements. However, all stars in the Milky Way have some heavy elements. Finally, the model omits the possibility of collisions of galaxies. From observations of young galaxies 5 billion or more light years away, astronomers find that many young galaxies are much smaller than the Milky Way. There are also many instances where 2 galaxies will collide. Despite some of the weaknesses of the model, it does explain well many of the features of the Milky Way except one. The Milky Way lacks stars that have virtually no heavy elements. These hypothetical stars would be called population 3 stars. It is possible that population 3 stars would be contaminated with heavy elements from the gases and dust from the supernova explosions. It is also possible that conditions in the early galaxy may have allowed only short-lived massive stars to form. The gas may have been too hot or too turbulent for the formation of small stars to have a lack of heavy elements. As the galaxy ages, its gas steadily forms more stars. These stars return some of the material to the galaxy in the form of gases ejected in their deaths. Some of the mass of these stars, however, becomes locked up in stellar remnants like white dwarfs, neutron stars, and black holes. Eventually, the Milky Way will use up all of its gas and be unable to make new stars. At that time, billions of years from now, our galaxy will contain only dead stars and will dim. Low-mass red dwarfs, whose lifetime is a few hundreds of billions of years. Gradually, even those red dwarfs will burn out, and the galaxy will fade from view of astronomers in other galaxies. And that is it for this lecture. See you guys later.